As a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor, and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Well, good morning. And as we continue to talk about truth in society and the Christian perspective of everything around us, from law and policy to church and the family, there are some topics that are so important that we dedicate a full show to focusing on that topic. And this is the thing I love about radio. It is my favorite medium because we can have these longer form conversations. When I was still doing, Fox News and, some of these other shows during the course of my representation for President Trump and well prior to that, it would always be kind of laughable to me that often the host would say, all right, so you have this really complicated legal question and, describe the Constitution. You have 30 seconds, go. And it's like, you can say maybe one or two talking points and that's about it. And I'm grateful that radio is a very different format than that. And we can have more in-depth conversations about things like the Constitution, like law and policy, and of course, the Judeo-Christian founding of our nation that is rooted in the truth of God. And so today we are going to be talking about Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution and the Convention of States movement and this whole project. So my good friend, and I know all of you know him well and respect him, Mark Levin, who is an amazing attorney, an excellent radio host in his own merit. I learn a lot from him. He's going to be joining me in the next segment to talk about this more. But I want to set this up because the moment that we talk about Convention of States, there is either an excitement from people who love this project, or there's this hesitance and immediate objection that, oh no, this is something that is going to be wildly dangerous for our nation, and we can't possibly do this. And then there are some people, and I've gotten a lot of emails actually, and people who contact me via social media and other ways that want to know more about this and want to have a comprehensive understanding of what exactly we're talking about with the Convention of States. So I hope that you will stay with us through this whole program and even provide the podcast version after the show to your friends who either want to know more about Convention of States and Article 5, or who maybe have some objections, because we want to be able to answer those objections with not only the truth, but also a persuasion for those of us who are advocates of the Convention of States project. And So what do we mean by the Convention of States? Well, this is actually rooted in the text of the U.S. Constitution. Article 5, if you go to the U.S. Constitution, says the Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution. Or, and that or is a very key term, or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which, in either case, whether it comes through Congress or the legislature, shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states or by conventions in 3/4 thereof. So this is the text of the Constitution. We have two different ways to amend our U.S. Constitution. And in the history of our nation, we have only amended our Constitution 27 times in our nation's history through the first method, which is that Congress proposed amendments, and then those amendments were ratified by the requisite number of the states. And that included our first 10 amendments, which are known as the Bill of Rights. So we've done this often in our country, and some amendments, in my perspective, and from my view as not only an American citizen but also an attorney, have been good for our country, like the Bill of Rights. And then others, like, for example, the 16th and 17th Amendments, the right for the federal government, or the power, rather, to collect income taxes, that that should not have ever gone through. I think that's been a detriment to our nation. And the 17th Amendment, which says that and provides a different way that we elect our U.S. senators, instead of having that done by state legislatures so that the Senate actually represented the states, we now do that by popular election. I think that's been a detriment, and it's made kind of both houses look very similar, right? So, but we've done that through Congress, yet we've never done it through a convention of the states. Well, why is that? And why do we use this term convention? Is it a constitutional convention? Or what exactly are the parameters? Well, we will be right back with more with my good friend Mark Levin and a great argument to actually utilize Article 5. So I want to talk with him, and then we'll be back with more after that from some kind of breakdown and analysis. But I'm very excited to finally have Mark Levin on the show and talk about this very, very important mechanism that our founders gave us for such a time as this. So we'll be right back with more on Jenna Ellis in the Morning. With inflation, the banking world collapse, and everything that Joe Biden is doing not to protect America, you need to make sure to secure your financial health, especially in retirement. And hey, if you're a millennial like me, that actually is sooner than you think. You need to start now, even if you are a millennial or a Gen Zer, to make sure that your financial health is actually healthy when we get to retirement. And Legacy Precious Metals has a revolutionary new online platform that allows you to invest in gold and silver online in real time. In a few easy steps, you can open an account online, select your metals of choice, and choose to have them stored in a vault or shipped right to your door. You'll have access to a dashboard where you can track your portfolio growth in real time anytime. You'll see transparent pricing on each coin and bar, and this puts you in complete control of your money. The platform is free to sign up for. Visit legacypminvestments.com and open your account and see this new investing platform for yourself. Gold hedges against inflation and against a volatile stock market. A truly diversified portfolio isn't just more stocks and bonds, but different asset classes. This brand new platform allows you to make investments in gold and silver, no matter how small or large, with just a few clicks. Visit legacypm.com to get started. You can download the free investor's guide, and you can also call Legacy PM Investments to talk to a portfolio expert to get expert answers to your to customize your personal portfolio. So visit legacypminvestments.com to get started. Tell them that Jenna sent you. Well, welcome, friends, and I am so excited to finally have on the program my dear friend who is, you all know as the Great One, Mark Levin himself. He's the host of Life, Liberty, and Levin on Fox News, and also the host of the great radio program. And Mark, I really appreciate you joining, because a lot of my listeners have asked questions and want to talk more of the conversation of the Convention of States project, of course, the Article 5 in the U.S. Constitution that shows two alternative methods that are prescribed in the Constitution for amending the Constitution, and you have long been a champion of this. So describe for me why you think that this is a good idea, as opposed to what some people would say, well, no, this is just opening the Constitution to a new constitutional convention, and we're just going to change everything in the United States.
Well, first of all, it's a great honor to be with you. As you know, I have enormous respect for you and your legal skills and all the rest of it. So that's number one.
Thank you.
Number two, Convention of States is in the Constitution. I didn't make it up. You didn't make it up. If it was a threat to the Constitution, does anybody think the framers would actually put it in the Constitution? And unlike the daily changing of the Constitution that occurs in Washington, D.C., where they appear to have a regular constitutional convention and keep changing the Constitution without going through the amendment process, as you point out, the framers of the Constitution in Philadelphia put this language in Article 5 to allow for two ways to amend the Constitution, and both of them are very difficult by design. The first one has been used several times, as we know. The second one involves the legislatures of the states. It's pure federalism. And so right now, if we get 34 states who agree on certain issues that they want to debate in their own meeting. States used to have meetings all the time. It's a meeting. That's all it is. You can call it a convention, but it's a meeting where the legislatures send delegates. They discuss what it is they want to do. They make their votes, and then it has to go through the ratification process, which means 3/4 of the state legislatures or conventions of the state. So that process, where 38 state legislatures or conventions, depending on what they decide, have to approve an amendment, still is there. So the debate shouldn't be, oh, we're going to have a constitutional convention to destroy the Constitution. The debate should be, we have our work cut out for us to get any change in the Constitution that will save the Constitution. So as an example, I think we're almost, give or take, around 20 states, believe it or not, even though this has been a fairly low-profile process. And as you know, and I know, and I think your listeners know, Washington is not going to reform Washington. Congress is not going to say, given all the convoluted rules they have for operations there, you know what, we're too big, we're too strong, we're violating the Constitution. Congress creates all these statutes that delegates all this power to an administrative state that's not even in the Constitution. Then the Supreme Court typically upholds the regulations. And now we have a president who issues executive orders like lollipops. And so people complain about it, but writing your congressman or senator or calling him is not going to fix it. So I think it was 2 days before the end of the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, where George Mason got up. George Mason is the author of the Virginia Declaration of Rights. And Thomas Jefferson used, among other things, the Virginia Declaration of Rights when he did the first draft of the Declaration of Independence 5 weeks later. So George Mason gets up. George Mason was a real stickler. He was a delegate who voted against the Constitution because he thought it gave too much power to the central government. And he was the one who opposed a so-called, what we call today, Bill of Rights, because he was concerned by listing rights we might leave one or two out. He was wrong about that, but that's okay. His mindset was correct. He gets up on the floor of the Pennsylvania Assembly House where they were meeting, and he says, look, what if Congress goes rogue? What if the whole federal government goes rogue? They're not going to fix themselves by proposing amendments to the states. We need to have another way to amend the Constitution that involves the states directly. He's the one that came up with the language for the second way of amending the Constitution in Article 5. They voted on it. Madison sort of rolled his eyes, if you will, and said, okay, fine. And yet it was Madison, about 20 years before, 30 years, whatever it was, before the Civil War, who pointed to that provision of Article 5 when he was written and others asked him about the ability of states to withdraw from the Union. And it was Madison who pointed to that and said, states have a lot of power if they seek to exercise it. And it's not just him. Everett Dirksen, who was a great Republican leader of the Senate from Illinois in the 60s and 70s, he said the same thing. Milton Friedman, at the end of his book, Free to Choose, he points to it. Ronald Reagan has pointed to it in the past. Others have too. And so what happens is the media and the Democrats, rhinos, and certain so-called conservative groups, they object to this. On the left, they object to it because they prefer to have their own system of changing the Constitution, which they have. And some of these groups on the right are kooks, to be perfectly honest with you. And so they say, no, there will be a constitutional convention. So my challenge is this. How could you possibly have a runaway convention when you still need 38 states, that's the legislatures or conventions, to ratify whatever comes out of this meeting? How could you have a runaway convention? There's no such thing. Because the ultimate process with the 38 states is how you do it in the first way and the second way of amending. Again, our problem is going to be getting the amendments passed, not a runaway convention. I hope I haven't rambled too long here.
No, that was perfectly stated, and I love how you describe, Mark Levin, this as a meeting, because there are conventions all over. There's a Republican National Convention, there's a Democrat National Convention, there are conventions at convention centers all over the country. That doesn't mean that we are opening up the Constitution to changes at those meetings. And so people, I think, get so bogged down in the terminology that they're not willing to look at the system that our founders provided to give the states more power. And as we've looked at the ways that the Constitution has been amended in our nation's history, we've seen that a lot of those ways have only increased federal power, specifically with a lot of the Reconstruction Amendments and then the 16th and 17th Amendments, which in my view should be repealed, the national federal income tax, as well as the method of changing the election of United States senators to a popular vote instead of appointed by the state legislatures, so that they actually had responsibility to their own state. So in the particulars of the Convention of States project that you talk about, that has actually passed legislation in this bill that or recommendation resolution to move forward, this only has 3 subject matter in it. And so this is not anything that would repeal the Second Amendment, nothing that would repeal freedom of speech. Those topics aren't even on the table. So in the sense of term limits, balanced budget, judicial reform, what are, in your perfect world, what would be some amendments that we should see out of a convention of the states?
I proposed 11 of them. I think those are 3 of them in the Liberty Amendments. And I, among other things, I give power back to the elected representatives of the people, take some power from this massive bureaucracy. And I was trying to think about the best way to do it. And I came up with an idea. Any regulation that has a market impact of $100 million or more would have to be provided to a special joint committee of the Senate and House for them to review. And after they review it by majority vote of the House and the Senate, they would have to endorse it. And if this committee doesn't act within 6 months, the proposed regulation is killed. In other words, reverse the process. They delegate these powers to faceless bureaucrats who are eliminating the combustion engine, who are eliminating under the navigable waters language in the Constitution, who are eliminating lakes, private property, all this other stuff going on without our input. They want to eliminate gas stoves, and you just go down the list. And that's not the way a republic is supposed to function. This was set up, by Wilson and then FDR and then the Great Society, and now we are where we are. And so that idea was, okay, you can propose whatever you want, but it's going to this joint committee so it could be manageable. That joint committee will make its own recommendation to Congress, and you have to vote on it if it has a market value of $100 million or more. So as an example, they wouldn't be able to abolish through the backdoor regulation the combustion engine and cars. They wouldn't be able to abolish gas stoves. All this stuff would have to go to this committee, and the bureaucracy would know that it has to go to this committee. That's one example. Another example I have in the book is I don't think the Supreme Court in every case should have the final say, but I don't believe in electing justices either. So I was trying to figure out the best way to handle that. And again, I think the elected representatives. So I have suggested an amendment where if three-fifths, not a super-duper majority, but a supermajority of both houses of Congress decide, they can vote to nullify a decision of the Supreme Court. Not rewrite it, not replace it, just nullify it if they do it within 24 months. So you have, predictability, and people can rely on what's coming out of Washington, D.C., one way or the other. It's not just hanging over their heads. And I also have, as an alternative, if three-fifths of the state legislatures vote to nullify a Supreme Court decision, again, within 2 years, 24 months, then that's the final say. Rather than, 5 lawyers who happen to get picked to be justices of the Supreme Court, and you have 5-4 votes on what fundamental rights are. So in other words, if one justice swings, it's not a fundamental right. So I think there's some perversity in all that. And of course, the framers never expected the Supreme Court to be as powerful as it is, or any of these branches of government. So that, again, that kind of diversifies the power and gives the legislatures some power. It's not that I trust the legislatures. It's not that I trust any of them. It's just how, in a system of imperfect government with very imperfect people, do you try to figure out the best way to handle these things? So I don't think 5 justices should be making decisions that affect us for the rest of time. I think they can make those decisions, but if the state legislatures want to say, or even Congress, then they rally the people. And then we can have a say. So we go to the state legislature, we go to Congress. So we, the people, have a say. It's not a direct vote. I don't necessarily think the majority should always win when it comes to unalienable rights. They're unalienable rights. They're not subject to majority vote. But I think that would be the best way. And there's other things in there, too, about taxes and spending. And you can see what they're doing on this budget. You can see what's happening on the debt ceiling. You can see what Biden's doing to the country and the economy. I have a proposal in there that requires a complete revamping of that entire spending, borrowing, and budgeting process. So that's the kinds of things that I would like to see. My one objection was we shouldn't limit it to 3 things. We should have more than 3 things, because I don't know if we'd ever be able to pull it off again. But in any event, these 3 things are very, very important that you mentioned.
Yes, they are. And I would agree with you. I wish that there was more subject matters in this resolution, but at least getting it that far does address really important substantive issues that our country really needs, and particularly judicial reform. And you express this so well, Mark Levin, that we need to make sure that the judiciary, which has become the method that the Democrats use to change and amend the Constitution at their whim and their will, that has become the method that they have preferred and they have successfully done. And this is why now the Democrats are talking about expanding the court and court packing, because the new majority is not giving them the outcome-based activist decisions that they want. And so why do you think, though, that Republicans, and you've described some of them, I think, aptly as kooks, but at least in the state legislatures that have the opportunity to move forward and have a convention of states, why aren't more of them doing this and actually understanding all of this as you and I are talking about it?
We have the John Birch Society, which is still kind of bouncing around out there. We have Eagle Forum, which I have been a big supporter of, Phil Schlafly's old group. We have 1 or 2 gun rights groups, not the NRA, but others, who are stirring the pot. And they're dead wrong. They have no idea what they're talking about, or worse, they do, and they're misleading people. I mean, do people really want to get back to a constitutional system or not? Because at this point, we're in a post-constitutional system. I don't see us embracing federalism. I don't see us embracing representative government. I see that we move further and further away from constitutional government. More and more power centralized in Washington, D.C., more and more power centralized in the Democrat Party, in the permanent government, the bureaucracy, their judges, and now you see how their president conducts himself like an autocrat. And you see the Democrats in Congress doing things the framers could never have dreamed of. When they have a Democrat president, they confer their legislative power to that president. When they don't, they try to destroy the Republican president who's in office. This is not the kind of government that the framers had in mind, and here we are. So what are we? And so these other groups are very myopic, and wrongly so. As I say, there's no threat of a constitutional convention because you still have to have 38 states that ratify anything that comes out of it. And the reason we need to go to this second way of amending the Constitution is they are using the Constitution to destroy the Constitution, and we need to save the Constitution. because without it, we're just another centralized, economically socialist, culturally Marxist country, like in Europe. And we're declining, and we're unraveling. And this empowers the Democrats and the hard left, or what I call the American Marxists. The Constitution is what stands between us and tyranny. It's what stands between us and totalitarianism. And it's what stands between us, quite honestly, and the Democrat Party, which embraces all of this stuff. So it'll be nice if we could have these people use their heads. You know, we have a Republican leader, I think it was in Montana, either in the House or the Senate, who blocked a vote. We had Andy Biggs, when he was the president of the Senate in Arizona, who blocked the vote. As soon as he got elected to Congress, his replacement let the vote occur, so Arizona is now in the plus column. They voted to support the resolution. Just a lot of bizarre, misplaced thinking about this. And you'll notice, Jenna, you and I are talking about using the Constitution as it was intended to be used. We're not talking about any extra constitutional means. We're trying to address extra constitutional conduct. If you look in the Constitution, where is judicial review?
Nowhere.
It's an implied power. You have to have it. We understand from common law, from Britain, somebody has to be able to make decisions. But where is it written that it's the final decision? Maybe out of chaos people think that, and in most cases they're probably right, but that's why I think that needs to be addressed when it comes to these major issues that judicial review that's not even in the Constitution, but representative government is at some point part of the representative government when it comes to these major cases, ought to, if it chooses, have a say, and not make it easy, but still have a say. Right now we have no say whatsoever, given the power of the court. You know, Jefferson saw this early on. He was very concerned about this, the power of the judiciary. And he despised Marshall, John Marshall, who would become Chief Justice. And John Marshall was actually a distant cousin of Jefferson's. But Marshall had worked for Adams, and he was Secretary of State. And you know all this. I'm just letting the audience know all this, that. And so the Marbury versus Madison decision, which I wrote about in Men in Black, is really, I don't even agree with the decision. I'm in a very small minority, but yeah. And so I read this decision, and the Federalist side, yeah, that was fantastic. What do you mean it was fantastic? He grabbed power that he didn't have. Now, that said, Marshall was highly political. He'd run for office, and he lost. He was Secretary of State under the opposition party. Jefferson comes into office. They tried to push through a whole bunch of magistrates or judges, and the Jefferson wouldn't go for it. One of them brings a lawsuit and says, you know, I have a property right in this appointment. And Marshall writes, well, you don't have a property right in this appointment, but I have the power to make that decision. Now, what bothers me about that decision, not only was it wrong from my perspective, substantively, but Marshall should have recused himself. He was involved as Secretary of State in signing the guy's nomination. And so, you know, the left uses that as empowering the court to do whatever it wishes to do. Even look at the issue of marriage. That's up to the states. And they decided it was up to the justices. Look at the issue of abortion. They got it right. You know, Alito and the others. It's up to the states. And the left goes nuts. They threaten Supreme Court justices. They want to expand the court so they get the decision they want. So they oppose federalism. They oppose representative government. They oppose constitutionalism. And we support it. Now, if you want to get it back, if you want to at least try to get it back in some significant way, then you'll support Convention of the States. If you just want to whine about it and rub your hands and complain, then you won't. It's that simple.
So well said. And Mark Levin, I so appreciate your insights and championing these issues. And I agree that we need to use the Constitution and the way that it was designed to be able to flex around how the Democrats are trying to manipulate it so that we can combat this and we can say, no, federalism matters, state sovereignty matters. And imagine if we had had that amendment that you propose, that state legislatures in a 3/5 majority could nullify a decision. We may have had that in Obergefell. There were over 30 states that had constitutional amendments to their state constitutions that only recognized one man and one woman in a marriage. And we could have said no to the federal government in ways that we should have. So I am a huge champion of the Convention of States project. I know that you are. I could talk to you for so much longer, and I really appreciate your time today. It was an honor. And where can people find you and also find all of your books so that they can read more and hopefully if they have friends that are objecting to this type of method to use the Constitution can provide that as an educational tool?
Well, the Liberty Amendments, I guess, on Amazon. You probably won't find it in any public schools. They're busy banning conservative books, I understand. And Amazon, I suppose, that's where all the books are. I guess that's it. As for finding me, they can find me on the radio or TV. I make it very hard for people to contact me because I have things I have to do, and I just can't handle all the emails, if you know what I mean. In fact,
Absolutely.
To set up this wonderful interview with this wonderful lady, and you're all those things, Jenna. You have a lot of fans, and we're very proud of everything you've done, regardless of the horrific attack that you've come under because of what's going on in this country today. Jenna had to deal with my wife the whole time in order to get my schedule straight because I can't even follow my schedule. So I want to thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you so much, my friend. And your wife is very lovely and really appreciate your time. And thank you for coming on and educating all of us in how to continue to champion all of these issues and fight for our country because we are the last beacon of freedom. So continue to champion these things. And I always love listening to you. My family are huge fans as well. So hopefully we'll have you on again soon and without quite as much consternation in getting you here. So we appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Well, God bless. You take
God
care.
bless you too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. With inflation, the banking world collapse, and everything that Joe Biden is doing not to protect America, you need to make sure to secure your financial health, especially in retirement. And hey, if you're a millennial like me, that actually is sooner than you think. You need to start now, even if you are a millennial or a Gen Zer, to make sure that your financial health is actually healthy when we get to retirement. And Legacy Precious Metals has a revolutionary new online platform that allows you to invest in gold and silver online in real time. In a few easy steps, you can open an account online, select your metals of choice, and choose to have them stored in a vault or shipped right to your door. You'll have access to a dashboard where you can track your portfolio growth in real time anytime. You'll see transparent pricing on each coin and bar, and this puts you in complete control of your money. The platform is free to sign up for. Visit legacypminvestments.com and open your account and see this new investing platform for yourself. Gold hedges against inflation and against a volatile stock market. A truly diversified portfolio isn't just more stocks and bonds, but different asset classes. This brand new platform allows you to make investments in gold and silver, no matter how small or large, with just a few clicks. Visit legacypm.com to get started. You can download the free investor's guide, and you can also call Legacy PM Investments to talk to a portfolio expert to get expert answers to your to customize your personal portfolio. So visit legacypminvestments.com to get started. Tell them that Jenna sent you.
Have you ever picked up a towel set because it felt so soft in the store, but then when you leave and you go to use it, it's not really that absorbent? It's basically a towel that is leaving you out to dry. That's why MyPillow has developed the MyPillow towels, towels that actually work. I know, it's totally mind-blowing. Towels that actually dry you. Their 6-piece towel set includes 2 bath towels, 2 hand towels, and 2 washcloths. They come in a variety of colors. I have the sage green and the white. I love them. And right now you can receive a 6-piece set for only $39.98 with promo code Jenna. That's JENNA. So go to mypillow.com right now and click on the radio listeners special. MyPillow products come with a 10-year warranty and have a 60-day money-back guarantee. So to receive this amazing offer on the 6-piece towel set of MyPillow towels, just go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener special, and enter promo code Jenna, that's JENNA, or call 1-800-564-8475. That's mypillow.com, promo code Jenna.